So, welcome to episode 2 of the Men of Tomorrow podcast. I'm here with my son, Kailash, and we're going to talk about
Everything. We're going to talk about everything.
We're going to talk about everything. Where are we, Kailash?
Well, currently we're in Bobbin Head National Park, but what car are we in today?
We're in a Volvo. What? I'm in my son's car.
It's a bit of an interesting one because Volvo gave me one of their cars for a week just to drive around, create some content. And we thought one of the best ways we could show off Volvo was by doing an episode of the podcast in it.
I have to admit, one of the best things in life is stealing your son's car keys. For so many years, Kailash would take my car. He wouldn't even tell me I needed the car. I'd get stuck. So yes, I've actually stolen Kailash's car keys. Yay!
So you took it to the entrance last night when I should have probably been driving it. What was your favorite thing about the car?
So the most favorite thing I liked about the car was being with my lovely wife and taking her for a date night in a car. That's pretty cool.
What was your favorite feature about the car?
I think my favorite feature about the Volvo is always safety. I grew up knowing that the Volvos were the safest cars. Just being in this amazing car that felt safe but felt like a sports car was very cool.
Yeah, I think what was so interesting is like we've always heard Volvo is a safe car, but when you think of Volvo, you don't think of it being like a quick car. But this car goes 0 to 100 in 4.4 seconds.
I have to admit, I don't like the fact that my son drives a really fast car. So I think one of the things I'm really grateful for is that Volvo has got the grunt, but it's the safety. And I think for a dad, especially when your sons are driving, one of the scariest things when your sons are growing up is they're going to get into a car with someone or they're going to drive a car in a way that's not safe. So knowing that the Volvo's got great safety record makes me feel really good.
Yeah, so talking about safety, I think one of the things we've talked about when I've grown up is you've always allowed me to make my own mistakes, but also be safe while doing so. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on when is too much intervention too much when caring about your child's safety, and when do you just have to chuck them in the deep end and make their own mistakes even when their safety may be compromised?
So one of the things I've noticed is some parents are way too protective, and they're too protective in primary school, in high school, and university, and they put their kids in bubble wrap. But what happens is then kids can't make decisions. They have decision phobia. They suffer from anxiety. I think it's okay to fail. I love the fact that you failed. I kind of enjoy the fact that you failed every now and then. One of the things I felt really important is to see you fail, but when you're hurt, not physically, but even emotionally, that you can come home and you know it's safe.
Yeah.
That you can recuperate at home if you need to. But I don't want to fight your fights. I don't want to fight your battles. I want to make sure that you fail, you get hurt, but you learn resilience, because the only way you learn experience is through stuffing up.
Yeah, and I think one interesting thing is that our family's quite a busy family. We leave the house at 7 o'clock, and most of the days we only get back at 8 or 9. And so just having home as a safe place allows us to use that as a place to recharge, reset, and then go out into the real world and struggle to make the challenges, to make the challenging decisions, because we know we can always go back home and it's a safe environment.
I think one of the biggest things that I've learned with you is when you stuff up, not to judge you. And I know when I've stuffed up, I felt judged. But letting you know, okay, you've stuffed up. It's cool. I hope you're going to learn from this. But I think a lot of parents judge their kids when they stuff up.
Yeah.
And I think the difference between you and me is there's just flight hours. I think you're significantly smarter than I am, but I just have more flight hours.
Gosh, I hope so. Yeah.
And I've got the scars from the falls, the breaks, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the failures. And that scar tissue can protect you, but it can make you a bit rigid.
Yeah.
So I think parents have got to let their kids develop their own scar tissue every now and then.
Yeah. I think also corporate experience, but things they've gone through, they always say, I cut my teeth in this, or I earned my scars through that. And I never understood it before I did it. Now I get it. Like, I understand that life, no matter who you are, hits you with some incredibly challenging challenges. And it's really just about how can you deal with them? How can you get to that next stage? And also, who do you have around you that can support you when you're going through those challenges?
So I always say shift happens.
Yeah.
And shift stands for situations helping individuals fundamentally transform.
Yeah.
And, you
It's
know,
not a tongue twister at all.
but I think if you don't fundamentally transform, you get SHIT. And
Yep,
that comes
yep,
again and again. So how do you turn shift into fertilizer? I think
yep,
that's one of the most important things. I think that's the heart of resilience. It's the heart of anti-fragility.
yep,
You're not going to go through life without shift. And I
yep,
think as you turn 21, you shifted. So a lot of times I see men that have grown older,
yep.
but they're still boys.
So what do you think makes that difference? Because I even see it now that you meet some 26 or 27-year-old boys, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, when does that shift happen? Do you think it's a certain event in life? It's a certain challenge someone gets through, or it's a certain way of thinking that you need to shift into?
So once upon a time, we used to have coming of age ceremonies. Funnily enough, in indigenous cultures, or in the Jewish tradition, is the Islamic tradition, in the Hindu tradition, Eastern, Western, it used to be when boys were 14,
Yeah,
a multiple of 7, right?
yeah,
And so a lot of coming of age ceremonies, unfortunately now, are
yeah,
not celebrated.
yeah,
The coming of age ceremonies are two things. Number one is when you get your driver's license
yeah,
and when you can drink.
yeah,
And both of those two are scary. So
yeah,
it's weird being in a Volvo
yeah,
that you've got a brand deal with, talking about these two things. One of the riskiest things for men
yeah,
and boys are cars and alcohol. There needs to be a shift that's more than alcohol. So I think a coming of age process needs to be more than alcohol and driving.
yeah.
I think the biggest shift to make a boy into a man is the need to serve.
What do you mean by that? Serve others, serve your planet, or just serve the people around you?
I think it used to be both. So, in a lot of indigenous cultures,
Yeah,
you go from being a boy to a man. A boy is looked after by the tribe,
yeah,
but a man is there to serve the tribe. And I think to make it safe, to provide for the tribe, where you put yourself at risk
yeah,
before the tribe was looking after you. I think a lot of young men don't make that transition
right.
because a lot of society is, oh, look at the, like we talked about Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
All about his, look at my cars, look at my muscles. It's not about, look at how,
Look what I can do for other people. Look
yeah.
how I'm impacting other people's lives. It's all about looking at me, look at what I've achieved.
So I think going from look at me to how can I serve you?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that is the transition we need to make from boys to men.
yeah. I like that. I think one interesting thing is when the Volvo, which is an absolutely nice car, we're in Bobbin Head National Park. And this was a place we used to go, I think, every weekend when I started to drive. In Australia, you need 120 hours to get your O's, so learner's drivers, to P's. I think we clocked 220 in my logbook and then we just stopped writing the hours. That time was really pivotal because I think after that moment in time, it's not like you have a set time to spend with your kids. Generally, you're doing your learner's license from around about 15 to 17. And by the time you're 18, you're at uni, you're not really spending time with your friends and family. Do you find that after that period of time, just generally we spend not a lot of time together?
So a lot of people say, "Oh, I've got to teach my kids how to drive," but I
Yeah,
think that was one of the best parts of being a dad
yeah,
with you, both with you and your sister. I got to spend time with you in a closed
yeah,
room,
yeah,
and I found that really joyful. I think what I wanted to do during that time was connect with you,
yeah,
but connect with you in a different way. I think a lot of young boys struggle to look eye to eye. So if we
yeah.
talk, but when we're driving and we're not looking at each other,
We're focusing on the road.
we're
Yeah,
starting
yeah,
to focus on the road. But I think that allows our subconscious to kick in.
yeah,
And so you start to talk about relationships, you start to talk about career. And I
yeah,
didn't find it as a chore. I thought, wow, this is one of the most important times of my life because it's one of the highlights of being a dad.
yeah,
And we talked about this, about trying to become your inner voice.
yeah,
Do you want to
yeah.
share with me what you think about that?
I think what's so interesting is when I'm driving, I can hear your voice when I'm on the road. And there's when a three lane road and I was driving and I could tell two cars were about to hit into each other. And my first reaction was, okay, what would you tell me what to do? So I went on the brakes, went to the far left lane and just waited until everything happened and I could just get out of that incident safely. I think what's so interesting is that I wasn't thinking back then. It was you through me. And it's really interesting to think that a lot of what I think is a result of what you and also my mom taught me. Yeah, and just find that really interesting.
So I think what we do is one of the most powerful things as a parent is you become your inner voice for your child. So when I'm driving, I hear my dad's inner voice. Now he passed away quite a few years ago now, but sometimes he's with me when I'm driving. And I think part of I'm getting emotional here. When I hear my dad's voice, and I sometimes hear you speak, I can hear his voice with you. You know that I drive sometimes 5 kilometers under the speed limit.
Yeah.
That's what my dad always told me. He said,
Yeah.
look, if it's raining, if you're a little bit nervous, you don't need to get there 2 seconds faster. Arrive there safer. And there's so many times that 5 kilometers has saved
you.
my life.
Yeah.
And if it wouldn't have saved me, you wouldn't be around.
Yeah.
So to a certain degree, and I think one of the things that we have to do is young boys and young men love speed. It's that dopamine hit that you get from speed.
One thing I found really interesting was when I was on the train, I saw a dad trying to teach his kids how to read. And what was so surprising was that he was on his phone and he was trying to force his kids to read. And growing up, why I loved reading so much was because I saw you do it. Why I loved art so much was because mom loves art. And I think we learn a lot from our parents subconsciously. So whatever they do, we will go and do it. We don't really listen to what they say, but we listen to what they do.
I think that's really powerful. I look at your mum really helped you learn how to read and find the love of books. Because I was traveling, she would sit with you, she'd read stories with you.
Yeah.
And I'd try and see you on the weekends and we'd try and hang out together. But I think your mum really helped you get that passion.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents get this wrong. They try and teach their kids
Yeah.
rather than sparking a passion. If you can spark the passion, you don't have to tell them what to do. Oh, you need to go and study, or you need to go and do this. But sometimes when they tell people, oh, you need to read this book, or you need to study now,
Yeah.
they destroy the passion.
Yeah. And how do you think you've sparked that passion in me or Kavisha, my sister?
It's funny, both you and Kavisha are so different. And so the same rules don't apply.
Yep.
I wish I could say I knew what I was doing, but the biggest problem about being a parent is you have no freaking idea what you're doing most of the time. You're making it up. I've been lucky because mom has really guided you in areas that I couldn't guide you.
Yeah.
And I've tried to guide you in areas of business where mom couldn't guide
Yeah.
you. I think what's really worked for me is just reading a lot of books on leadership, communication, connection. And that gave me a very different view of what it means to be a dad.
Yeah.
If I was back in finance and I didn't get into the leadership game, I do not think I would be a tenth of the dad that I would be. Number one. And number two is I asked a lot of people. I talked to a lot of dads. I talked to a lot of moms and say, hey, what worked for you? What didn't work for you? I sometimes think the worst thing that you can do is raise your kids like you were raised. And I see that with a lot of people from our culture that think my dad taught me like this and that's the way and that worked, but the world's changed.
Yeah.
You live in a totally different world.
Yeah.
So I think number one is surround yourself with people that are doing it right.
Yeah.
Number two is don't assume that the way you were taught is going to work for your kids.
Yeah. And I think one interesting thing is, like, I have a lot of friends that are Indians. I went to a school predominantly of Asians and Indians, and there was a lot of strict parents. And you and mom were never strict, maybe to a detriment of myself sometimes, but it was a great experience just to go and make my own mistakes, but also be flexible that you were my parent, yes, when there was safety involved, but you were also my friend. What made you come to that decision to actually parent like that when a lot of parents of our culture aren't like that?
So one of the things I find is that parents are really strict, but the kids do whatever they want behind their parents' back. And I knew you were smart enough to do whatever you wanted. I was smart enough to do whatever I wanted. And your kids are smart enough to do whatever they want, and you won't find out. So one of the things I wanted to make sure is that if you were going to do something,
Yeah.
you'd at least tell me. And that's a way of keeping me safe. So telling you not to do something
Yeah.
is not a way to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Making sure I feel connected with you, that's how you feel safe.
Yeah. And I think I generally tell you a lot of things, or most things, but I think recently and even the last couple of years, you don't ask questions you don't want the answer to that you already know. Right?
I love it.
You don't put me in a situation where I need to lie to you, because that makes life easier for the both of us. When you go, where are you going? I'm going out. Okay, cool. That's the end of the conversation. I think a lot of other parents would be going, where are you going? Who are you going with? Why are you going out? And how are you going to get back home? And that's a lot of questions to answer, especially when you're 21.
Yeah. I think even when you were 15, 16, 13, 14, I would know when you lied to me.
Oops.
But if I made you feel judged for lying to me,
Yeah.
then our connection would be broken. It's okay to lie to your parents, I think, but I think it's my issue that the reason why you're lying to me is you don't feel safe to tell me the truth.
Okay.
So my job is not to beat you up emotionally, not
Yeah, yeah.
physically, to beat you up.
Don't think
Oh,
you
how
could.
could you
Yeah,
do that?
yeah,
How could you do that?
yeah,
How could you lie to me? No. What have I done to not make you psychologically safe
yeah,
in my presence that you'd want to lie to me?
yeah,
So I remember we talking about alcohol,
yeah,
right? And I said, hey, Kailash, if you're going to drink alcohol behind my back,
yeah,
I'd rather you drink it in front of me. Your mum's a doctor. If something happens, we can look after
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
And therefore, you didn't need to hide any
No,
alcohol drinking. And you just waited until you were old enough to drink alcohol. But then also, you had a good relationship with alcohol.
that's very true. Yeah. So thank you so much for tuning in to episode 2. And thank you so much for Volvo for giving us a beautiful car to film in. And we'll see you in the next episode. See you.
I just want to say thank you to Volvo for letting me steal my son's car keys. I've never done that before. The first car I had to work so hard to get, and he got a Volvo CX. What is it called?
It's an XC60 T8 Black Edition.
How
So it's
cool
top of
is
the
that?
range. It's
It
really
looks
beautiful.
cool. I don't know what it does. I think it goes from A to B. That's all I care about. And you go from A to B, which is safe. And that's really important for me as a dad.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Bye.